63 BC, Roman general Pompey breaches the temple in Jerusalem and enters the Holy of Holies, the sanctuary only the high priest may enter, and only on the Day of Atonement. For Rome, victory. Rome can go anywhere. For Judea, temple desecration. Within a generation, the Roman Senate will declare Herod king of the Jews. But by 27 AD, the teacher from Nazareth will begin preaching a third kingdom that's even higher, three kingdom contests: Caesar's empire, Herod's Judea, and the kingdom of heaven. This lesson follows from the Sermon on the Mount to Palm Sunday, the kingdom teachings of Jesus in conflict with Rome. I'm Mr. Hull. This is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where history reveals truth and wisdom for your journey. We take a classical approach to history, grounded in what actually matters, like Rome, kingdoms in Judea, and the teachings of Jesus, the lowly opposite king the ancient world had ever met. And we're finding that out now, because by the end of this episode, you'll understand how Roman kingdom power and the kingdom of heaven and the Jewish kingdom of Herod are colliding in first century Jerusalem. And you can see how it connects to the long-range clash between the visible empires and powers of kings versus invisible truth. Let's begin. As we picture Judea in the first century BC, we see civil war, two Jewish brothers fighting to be king. Both make the worst political decision of their lives. They invite Rome to mediate. Rome doesn't mediate. Rome conquers. So that's 63 BC when Pompey lays siege to Jerusalem. And in just 3 months, Jewish defenders had refused to fight on the Sabbath, and Pompey knew this religion on the seventh day. That's when he had his engineers building siege ramps with no resistance. And as they stacked timber, they piled earth, they rolled rams into place. The walls of Jerusalem crack and Roman soldiers enter. They slaughter, they overcome. And it's really a highly defensible city. This is strategic. It's Jerusalem. It's been the cultural, religious capital. But Pompey has it now. And for Pompey to do this unthinkable entry into the Holy of Holies, for Romans, he's just being curious. He wants to see. We got temples all over the Roman world. What's the big deal? But for Jews, monotheistic, this is a violation at the highest level. And for Rome, it works because Rome now owns Judea, but Rome doesn't rule Judea directly, not yet. If you're coming here from Lesson 53, you see the way Rome works with the local king. So here, Rome installs their local king, a puppet. His name is Herod. Maybe you call him Herod the Great, but he's complicated. Herod isn't actually even Jewish by blood. Idumenian, half foreign, half converted, and he's known to be fully paranoid. He has executed his wife. He executes multiple sons. He executes anyone he's nervous about. But King Herod has another problem, and he can't execute this one. He needs to keep two audiences happy at once, very large and powerful audiences. Rome is one of them. Rome needs to see Roman kingdom power. It's the classical kingdom idea. You've got a king, he's in charge. No insurrections and no civil wars. But Jews, the history, the religion, they need to see Jewish faith. So Herod does what megalomaniacs do when they're cornered like this. building projects, Herod the Great expands the Temple Mount into a 35-acre platform, which we can still see today. 35 acres is 25 American football fields. Herod does this by piling colossal limestone blocks as retaining walls up against Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah, you would go back to lesson 10 to see Mount Moriah mentioned as Abraham was coming through, as Abraham was going to sacrifice his son. Mount Moriah. Herod's expanding it. The biggest stone, known as the Western Stone, is 44.6 feet long. That's 570 tons if you were to weigh a Boeing jumbo jet, fully loaded. This is the size, not the shape, but this thing is huge. And they were somehow moving this without modern engines and cranes, without electricity. Just rollers and thousands of laborers. This is Herod the Great's building project, and it will unify the people. It's still there today. You can visit and touch it. For people seeing the temple come back together, for Mount Moriah to be on their hands, they can press their hands on it and they can weep. For the temple to return the presence of God, that's what the temple, it's what any Roman temple would do to kind of bridge between the divine and the people. But it is very different for the Jews, the monotheistic Jews. This was the one place, Mount Moriah, the presence of God. Now, Herod does not stop in Jerusalem. Out on the Mediterranean coast, he builds a second monster, Caesarea Maritima. Caesarea, like the maritime Caesar port. It's a pagan port city named for Caesar. Very strategic. It's an artificial harbor, about 40 acres of pure Roman engineering that Herod is paying for to try to impress his Roman side. His engineers are pouring concrete that actually hardens under water. Concrete that hardens in salt water, creating dry land where there was none. And that's two cities, two messages. I mean, one message is that Herod the Great is so great. He can build all this, but Jerusalem message says, I'm a Jewish king. And what does the Caesarea message say? I am Caesar's man. You can work with me. You can keep me in power. The kingdom that Herod is leading shouts in two directions at once. But Herod is tormented really by this. He's not in a good place. Whenever Herod the Great comes up, since the 90s, kids in the classroom and the homeschool groups, they've always said, why is he Herod the Great? You know, he's like a crazy tyrant. Look at all of his family members that he's killed and the struggle he has had serving two masters. Yes, but the big building projects. He's left a lot of archaeology behind for us to learn from, and we like to learn. As a classical scholar, you like to learn, so click the like button. And the comments that you could leave about your impression of King Herod or the archaeology, and be sure to click the subscribe button. It really helps Classical Kingdoms, and we want to make you a classical scholar and an expert at the definition of a kingdom. So here is our definition of a kingdom. A kingdom is a place where someone rules. Kingdom has a domain. Someone is in charge. Someone belongs. Loyalty is shown and protection is promised. So to the Romans, Roman times, Rome rules. Rome is the kingdom. And so Caesar is in charge. As we enter the Pax Romana, as we enter Augustus and Tiberius, Caesar is in charge. Romans belong. And provinces of Rome belong. Loyalty is going to look like tribute. Protection comes with the Roman legions. They'll protect the roads. It's the Pax Romana. But the Jewish world still believes it's got a different king, an invisible one, a king who actually has not said anything for 400 years. Rome's grip on Judea is heavy. Rome's next move is not going to be with a sword, it's paperwork, because now with Augustus in charge, Octavian, if you're coming here from lesson 56, you see what his authority means. And one thing we mentioned there is that he calls for a census. Augustus is a really strong administrator. Ruling through paperwork, he is going to register 4 million Roman citizens by name. He keeps a personal handwritten ledger called the Brevidium. The Brevidium Totius Imperii. How's that Latin? It's the brief summary of the whole empire. Augustus knows how many soldiers he has, how many ships, how many provinces, how many denarii. He knows because he's writing it down himself. He's counting everything. And that's how a good administrator runs an empire. Think what that means when Augustus ordered the census, where you've got to go to your hometown. The Mediterranean's got to shuffle around, so bakers with their bread ovens, it'll leave them behind. Soldiers have to travel home. Carpenters lock up their shops and will walk hundreds of miles to a town they barely know. We have a carpenter that was doing that. His name is Joseph. He has a young pregnant wife named Mary. And the census, the Roman census Augustus called, sends them to Bethlehem. And why Bethlehem? Because you're going to register, you're going to tag up in your ancestral home city. Joseph descends from David. Rome wants every man counted. Ancestral hometown. Caesar Augustus really has no idea of what this is going to mean. And it's like ordering a tax, but we've got a catch, and that organizes the empire. But it also fulfills a Jewish prophecy. 700 years earlier, Micah in chapter 5, verse 2 of Micah said that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Now, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but there is that prophecy, and Bethlehem is the city, and Micah did not have any Roman legions. It was before any of that. Micah didn't have any authority or an idea of what a census could be, or Micah's prophecy is being fulfilled by Caesar's tax organization. And it's not a small detail in order to make sense out of the kingdom teaching that Jesus will be giving. It's going to help shape the meaning behind the definition of kingdom when it's not a Roman definition, Roman understanding. The most powerful man on earth performing this administrative act accidentally arranges the birthplace of the man Christians see as the Son of God, the Messiah, the King of Kings. The boy is born at the lowest possible level, kind of out back with the animals in a backwater town. Bethlehem is, filled with peasants, shepherds, and, under the heavy Roman tax burden. Jesus has to kind of skip ahead 30 years, flees to Egypt, grows up in the Galilee area around Nazareth, around the Sea of Galilee. But when he's about 30 years old, this is the beginning of the teachings that he has. And if he's going to teach about the kingdom, why is he doing it in Galilee? Galilee is the sticks. It's not Jerusalem. The land is good. The fishing is really good. Galilean families can fish for tilapia and sardines right out of the Sea of Galilee. But people of Galilee talk funny. Their accent is rough. Throwback to the influence of the Greeks and the Greek-speaking pagan cities that are scattered around the Galilean area. A little deeper dive into that Greek history. It does matter here, but to a proper Jerusalem Jew, a Galilean is like an embarrassing cousin Galilee and Nazareth, nothing good would come out of Nazareth. But Jesus was a carpenter from Nazareth. And if you could imagine being in the workshop and seeing Jesus work, and someone says, "Oh, that's going to be the guy. He's the guy that's going to challenge the Roman Empire," you would laugh like this, like the most out of place for someone to rise up against the Romans from here. No way Caesar would even notice something like this, nor would anyone locally ever follow. Around the age of 30, that Carpenter starts speaking and teaching. This is Jesus. And what he says doesn't really fit into the standard Roman kingdom category. He doesn't promise armies or, lead a rebellion. But he announces a kingdom of heaven that is already here. And let's start with the Sermon on the Mount. That's Jesus kind of starting his 3-year teaching career in Galilee. Everyone knew the Pax Romana was a wealthy time, that Romans loved luxury goods, that the Roman Empire was to ensure strong economy and peace everywhere. So Jesus uses that, and he asks, "Why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They don't labor or spin. Yet I tell you that even Solomon, King Solomon, the richest guy ever, in all of his splendor, was not dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grasses of the field, which is here today and tomorrow's thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? So do not worry, saying, 'What shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear?' For the pagans chase these things, the Romans, but the Heavenly Father knows you need them, and seek first his kingdom. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well." So people say, well, kingdom, seeking first the kingdom of God, the heavenly kingdom, means you're not seeking the Roman kingdom first. You're not a loyal member of it. Well, let's look at another teaching, because the Roman perspective about children are literally the property of the father. Everybody knew this. Romans had pater familias. That's the idea that the father's the head of the family. And for example, if he needed to sell a child into slavery, he could. Family needs money, sell a kid. And he did. Children are property. So Jesus knew this, and he uses it to teach this way. He says, when people ask, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, who's the greatest? And Jesus brings a child over and puts the child amongst everyone, says, I tell you the truth, unless you are like one of these kids, you're not going to be in the kingdom of heaven. You won't get it. It just won't make sense. You have to humble yourself as a little child to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So that's confusing. He's got 3 years to try to drive this point home. Other parables are like the visual teaching lessons that he would give. Like when he says the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovers in a field. And in his excitement, he hid the treasure, sells everything he owns so he could go buy that field and have that treasure. And this is God's heavenly kingdom that Jesus says is already running. It's already operating. And it's right under Rome's nose. No authority with Rome. So what are the 4 kingdom questions? Like, who rules? In Rome, it's the emperor. In Judea, it's King Herod. But in the kingdom of heaven, God rules. Jesus, Son of God. Who belongs? In Rome, the citizens. by birth or status, Roman citizens. And they're being tracked and cataloged like Caesar Augustus did. But in the kingdom of heaven, anyone gets membership in the kingdom. No status or census, and no kind of paterfamilias status where some people are slaves. In Rome, you've got to pay your taxes. You got to follow the laws about paterfamilias. And to the imperial cult, coming here from lesson 58, as we discuss the imperial cult, membership is sometimes a public display of loyalty, burning a pinch of incense to Caesar. But in the kingdom of heaven, it's repent, show mercy, seeking the kingdom first, being humble. In the Sermon on the Mount, they have the Beatitudes section. He says, one of them, God blesses those who are poor, realize their need for God, and kingdom of heaven is theirs. So it's literally the opposite of the Roman concept. And to Roman legions, the peace that's held together by the strong army, the kingdom of heaven's invisible, doesn't need it. It's very upside down for Roman brains. And this idea of Roman adoption, they knew that because Julius Caesar adopted Octavian, and that gave Octavian the kingdom. Only because of the legal adoption. Julius Caesar was the great uncle. Octavian became Augustus and took the whole kingdom because of that. And then it happened again. Augustus adopts Tiberius. And that made Tiberius the king. In fact, Tiberius is the Caesar at the time of Jesus. And it's going to keep going. Adoption is a Roman idea, how to grab a throne, how to get a kingdom. And Jesus will use that to say he wants to adopt everyone and make them members of the kingdom. Greater than a Roman legal contract, but very similar. And the Christian belief takes that, uses it. This is kingdom teaching, kingdom of heaven. And it doesn't matter if you're powerful like Octavian or important like Tiberius. It was for everybody. And you can just receive it. Don't have to earn it. So Rome, this is a contrast. So by learning this now, you're going to understand the conflict so much more, because it's going to take us so many lessons. With lesson 59, we're kicking off a trilogy for this time period of the Pax Romana. So we really do want to make you kingdom experts and classical scholars, because if Jesus is the Son of God, what does that make Caesar? You've got to be able to think through all of this. Caesar Augustus is officially called Divi Filius. That means Son of God. And he's been called that for a while. It's propaganda, and it's like the word evangelion. Evangelion, like the word gospel, like the evangelism, good news. The Romans used that word. These are Caesar's words, and Caesar's branding that he is good news. He is bringing the salvation, so to speak, the good news that the Romans are strong and powerful and they've got the kingdom. The final point in this lesson is at the time of Passover, Jerusalem is packed because Passover is a big season of the year, big week. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims pour into Jerusalem. They come down from Galilee. They're there in Jerusalem with tents on the hillside. They're camping out inside the temple. Priests are working overtime because of all the people that need to come through. There are an estimate of 256,000 unblemished lambs there for the slaughter. The Passover is about an unblemished lamb, a firstborn perfect lamb with no broken bones. This is a throwback to Moses and the Exodus. If you're coming here from lesson 13, this was covered as Moses and the Exodus and the people left, and the Passover was the angel of death passing over them because they had these unblemished lambs' blood, the blood of the lamb. They were covered by the blood of the lamb. They put it on their door. And when the Passover celebrants are there, they need a perfect lamb. Everybody does. And they roast it. It's a feast. This is the holiest week on the Jewish calendar. And it's the 10th of Nisan that the lamb selection process begins. Every household needs the perfect lamb without blemish, no broken bones. So they have to be inspected, examined, and this 4-day window starts on the 10th of Nisan. That happens to be what many call Palm Sunday. Jesus rides into Jerusalem on the 10th of Nisan. But it's not on a Roman war horse. A Roman kingdom would have a white horse and a powerful general all decked out, surrounded by troops, entering a city like Jerusalem, especially, polished armor, showing the authority of Rome. Jesus enters Jerusalem on a donkey, a young, untrained donkey, the kind a peasant would ride. And crowds that are cheering are not doing it like Roman style because they have to, or they're there for the power and the show. They're really there because at the end of Jesus' 3 years of teaching, they cry, Hosanna. That means save us, son of David. Save us, son of David. They throw cloaks on the ground. They're waving palm branches in victory, that this is like a coronation. At the end of the 3 years, it's like a celebration somehow. It's like the opposite of a typical Roman military parade that we've seen Julius Caesar doing and Pompey the Great doing. Augustus, they all do it. But our three kingdom contest, it's not Herod's parade. And it's not a Roman Caesar's authority to this parade. It's Jesus in the kingdom of heaven, the same gates that would cause the political and the Roman clash of all of these kingdoms, and it's happening during the same week. The Christian beliefs about the Passover pattern throughout this week, connecting to the Old Testament scriptures, the events of the Exodus, and this particular day, and how it's lamb inspection period. Do you see Jesus setting himself up as the lamb, as the Pharisees and everyone inspects? Christian belief is Passover lamb is riding the donkey, and it's going to fulfill the role of the temple for the original spiritual purposes that go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Jesus is doing something that could get him in big trouble with the Romans, with King Herod, insurrection if he's, representing this kingdom that is somehow higher than Rome. And in fact, he even goes into the temple and gives a warning about these colossal stones, the entire priesthood, the whole purpose of the temple. He's saying it's going to get destroyed. Jesus predicts the temple will be destroyed. What do temples do? Whether it's a Roman temple, the Jewish temple, number one, presence. The connection between God and the people on earth. Number two, sacrifice. It's that cost that reaches up. Number three, priesthood, the appointed mediator that can do it. Four, the forgiveness, the salvation. And five, the covenants, the promise of protection, the binding promise. And that's a temple. And for Jesus, he's a carpenter, but he is showing. He is fulfilling all five. He is riding the donkey, not a horse, but he takes over the whole kingdom concept. If he takes over and fulfills kingdom concepts, what is Herod's job going to be? What is Caesar's job going to be? The fallout is immediate. It's swift. Temple authorities want Jesus dead. The Romans don't care about the theology so much. They care about the crowds. The mob, they've got to keep people in line, no civil wars. But what's about to happen in our trilogy lesson coming up in lesson 60, Rome will deal with Jesus. It'll be brutal. It'll be clear. And what matters today is that three kingdoms, stacked up right here on Mount Moriah, coming through the same gates that week. One's got soldiers, one's got fishermen, one's got taxes, one's got bribes for the Romans, and another has the Passover feast that's being fulfilled. One promises peace through fear, and the other promises peace through forgiveness. One of them gets to show powerful kingdoms in every history book, and another one rewrites the definition of kingdom. This is not a Roman problem. It's really a human journey. It's exactly why Classical Kingdoms wants to make you a classical scholar. ClassicalKingdoms.com can really help you complete your classical history journey. Our classical approach allows you to learn to think and to know enough to see what's going on and to wonder how to dig in deeper and just understand it even better. The question is whether you can recognize history repeating itself when it does. Use lesson 60 to see what Rome does to Jesus, and use lesson 61 to see what will finally happen to this temple by the year 70. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.